the Parsha begins super suspenseful. Your mamish, it's like you're walking in to like this high level of stress and suspense. You have Yehuda, who's now standing in front of what he thinks is the number 2 of all of Egypt, which it is. He just doesn't know it's his brother. In a foreign country, in a foreign language, not speaking the language that he knows. Everything's done through an interpreter. And he's basically being accused of stealing the king's cup. And he needs to, in the last second, basically jump in and say, you can't do this. You have to stop. And he defends Binyamin from being taken by Yosef. Yosef can't control it anymore. He sees what's going on. He breaks down crying. And he says, Ani Yosef, O Devichai, the famous words. He embraces his brothers and he tells them quickly to go bring back Yaakov and bring him down because Egypt has a lot of food. There's going to be a lot of sustenance, and he has nothing to worry about. So that's the opening of this week's parsha. What hopefully, when at the end of this year, when you finish listening to and learning together today, you'll come out with a new understanding to this entire story, and more importantly, we'll get a better understanding of what does it mean to love one another. What real love and appreciation is for one another. And I want to open up with 2 to 3 basic questions. One, I'm sure every single person here in this room at some point in his life asked the question. It could be you've gotten different answers to this question, but I hope that the answer you'll get today is an answer that you've never heard before, and it's a mind-boggling answer that, again, will teach you how to love and how to appreciate one another. So let's jump right in. And the first question I'd like to ask you is Yosef HaTzadik. He gets taken captive by his brothers and he gets sold against his will. He's in the house of Potiphar. Then he gets thrown into jail and he's there for 12 years. But then what happens? Then he's able to interpret the dreams of Paro. And for the last 7 years, the 7 years of plentiful, Yosef is the number 2 person in Egypt. And then there's 2 years of famine before Yaakov actually comes down to Mitzrayim. So there's a total of what seems to be 9 years where Yosef is the number 2 person in all of Egypt. My dear brother, Yosef, tell your dad you're alive. What's going on? Right? You know he's suffering. You know that he's in pain. You know that he probably thinks, who knows what's going on over here. Send a message, or even send your brothers the message. Right? This is like a question that all the commentaries ask. You're sitting on the throne. I understand. When you're in jail, you're not in control. You can't send a letter to your father. You can't even call him. But you're the king of Egypt, basically. Get on a horse, get on a donkey, go do the 2-day journey, 3-day journey back to your father and say, hey, Dad, come back then. You're not going to believe this. Check this out. Let me show you the throne. Let me show you my car. Let me show you what I've got. Let me show you how popular I've become. Just like the ABCs of father-son relationship and the ABCs of Midos. And we know that Yosef and Yaakov have this incredible relationship, right? Yosef and Yaakov, it says that Yaakov taught Yosef all of his, all of his tricks of Uroes Echa Batzon. They were learning Torah together. He made him the Ktonis Pasim. So why is it that Yosef is seemingly making his father needlessly suffer? Literally. He's making him suffer for no point whatsoever. Just reveal that you're okay. Show him. Send him a letter. Question number 1, and I'm sure, like I've said, everyone in this room probably asked yourself this question at one point in your life. It could be there's a lot of answers to this question. I hopefully want to show you a new approach to this whole answer. And hopefully we'll come out with something fascinating. That's question number 1. Question number 2 is I want to focus on a very specific incident. And that is after Yosef reveals himself to his brother, he says, Ani Yosef O Devichai, he turns to his brother, the one brother that didn't sell him. And that is Binyamin. The one brother that's his full brother from his father and his mother. That's it. And he became an orphan at a very young age. And he turns to his brother and he hugs him and he kisses him and he embraces him and he cries on each other. They cry on each other's shoulders. It says in the pasuk like this: "Vayipol al tzavarei Binyamin achiv vayefk." He falls on his brother's neck and he cries. V'Binyamin bachal tzavarav, and Binyamin is also crying on the neck of Yosef HaTzadik. So Rashi very quickly points out. It says first vayipol al tzavarei Binyamin. What's tzavarei? That's plural for necks. It should say al tzavar Binyamin, right? And like it says later on, it says that Binyamin falls al tzavarav, on his neck. So what does it mean that he fell on the necks, plural necks of Binyamin? So Rashi quotes a medrash, and Rashi says like this. Rashi says, "Vayipol al tzavrei Binyamin achiv vayefk al shtei migdashot shatidim liyot bechelko shel Binyamin v'sofo licharef." Why is Yosef crying on the necks? What is the Torah hinting to? That he's crying on 2 things. He's crying for the 2 batei migdashot, which are going to be in the portion of Binyamin. That's what he's crying for, and that's what Yosef is crying for. But it says that Yosef, that Binyamin is crying on the neck of Yosef. What's that referring to? That's referring to the one Beis Hamikdash, or the one Mishkan that's going to be in the section of Yosef. Where did Yosef have a Mishkan? In Shiloh. If you've ever been here in Eretz Yisrael, they have a beautiful winery, but you can also see where the Beis Hamikdash was, where Chana davened, right? Ramah Karni Ba'Hashem, right? You can go to where that is, and over there you have that. It says that Yosef, Binyamin is crying on the neck of Yosef. He's crying on the Mishkan that's going to be in Shiloh. That's going to be destroyed. So you have these two brothers that love each other, that haven't seen each other in a very long time, okay? Close to 22 years, the majority of their lives, okay? And to the point that the Medrash tells us that Binyamin has 10 children, Rashi quotes this, and he names each one of his children after Yosef, right? One of them is Bela, Shenivla ben Omot. One of them is Becher, because he was Bechol. One is Naaman, because Yosef was Na'im Bioter. One is Chupim. He calls his son, Binyamin calls his son Chupim, because he was never able to go to the chuppah of his brother Yosef. So he has 10 different kids. Each one of his kids he names after his long-lost brother. So this is the final, the moment that they've been waiting for. They're finally embracing. After 22 years, they're hugging each other. They're crying. They're kissing. What are they crying about? Something that's going to happen in 1,000 years from now, 500, 700 years from now. The Beis HaMikdash that is going to be in the chelik of Binyamin, that's going to be destroyed. And the Beis HaMikdash, the Mishkan, that's going to be in the portion of Yosef HaTzadik, that's what they're crying about. Talk about a downer. Like, Habibi, you haven't seen your brother in such a long time. Live in the moment. Imagine walking into a bris and be like, this is terrible. See, this kid is born, he's going to die in like 90 years. Right? This is so bad. Like, he's going to be dead. And look at the grandparents. They're already 90. There's no way they're going to make it to his chuppah. Let's be honest, right? Like, imagine like walking around, like saying, they'll throw you out. Like, why are you focusing on the negative? You're at a bris, mazel tov. Look at the grandparents. They were zocheh to see the great grandson, right? Have a bris at age 90. He's the son. What are you sticking in all this negativity? So over here, they're finally meeting for the first time in so many years. Embrace him. I love you. I haven't seen you. You're looking for something to cry for. Right? Like you don't have what to cry about. I need to look 500 years, 1,000 years into Jewish history. Now I have something to cry about. Very strange medrash of what's going on. Obviously, there's something much deeper over here that we can take for our life. And also, if they're already crying, cry for yourself. Right? Why is Yosef crying for the Beis Hamikdash in Binyamin's portion, and Binyamin is crying for the Beis Hamikdash and the Mishkan in Yosef's portions? Each one should be crying for his own thing that he lost, not for the other one. So these are the three questions that I want to open up the shiur today. Fascinating, and we'll see, like I mentioned before, a whole new approach on what's love, and what does it mean to be compassionate, and what does it mean to be caring, and what's to be a good mentor and a good parent. So let's review. Question number one, very simple, very straightforward. Why in the world did Yosef HaTzadik not tell his father that he's alive? You're a king. You're number two in command. You can do whatever you want. Tell your father he's suffering every single day. Right? We just came out. You had parents, you saw the parents who were kids, Rahman al-San, were taken captive in Gaza. Every single day they're suffering. They can't sleep, they can't eat, they can't wake up. And that was 2 years. Okay? This has already been happening for, Yosef was away for 22 years. But at least the last 9 years, he could have sent the message. Send something. Send a sign of life. What's going on over here? Why is Yosef making his father suffer? Question number one. Question number two, why when Yosef and Binyamin finally meet, they're each crying for the Beis HaMikdash that's in their portion that's going to be destroyed in 1,000 years from now. Focus on the good. What are you focusing on the negative over here? Like you're looking for something to cry, and then if you're already crying, cry for yourself. Cry for the Beis HaMikdash in your section that's going to be destroyed. The Mishkan that's in your portion that's going to be destroyed. Why are you crying for the other person? So these are the three questions I'd like to open up, and like I said, Bezat Hashem, we'll see something hafle v'fele, something incredible. Now the shiur is based on the idea that I heard from Rav Shlomi, I think his name is Rav Shlomi Twersky. Shlomi Twersky is the brother of Rav Abraham D. Twersky. If you've heard of him, he was the famous psychologist and psychiatrist. He wrote dozens of books. Mamisha, an incredible tzaddik. I had the schus of hearing him a few times when I was in yeshiva, and also I had the schus of learning with him b'chavrusa when I was learning in Yerushalayim. So at the end of his life, he moved to Katamon, and I was in Kollel at that time. And just a good tip in general for people out there is that you see a tzaddik in your neighborhood, what should you do? Knock on the door and say, hey, do you have a little time to learn? Worst comes to worst, what will he tell you? No, right? But I knocked on his door and I said, hey, do you have a little time to learn? He said, sure, I would love to. And I would go to his house and we learned the Bnei Yissaschar together. And it was absolutely an incredible experience. It just something you should all try to do. And worst comes to worst, the tzaddik, the Rav, will say no, but you have an opportunity to do it. You definitely do it. They say that every zatzal, right? We speak about like the tzaddikim of past, right? All the zatzals, right? That speak, they're all shlitas now, right? All the rabbanim that are now shlitas, you have an opportunity to go learn with them, to go. So go definitely try to embrace it. So this is an idea from the brother of Rav Twersky, Abraham D. Twersky, Rav Shlomi Twersky. He was a Rav in Denver. I think he was like a Chassidish Rav there, and he gives the following approach, and it's based on his idea. So let's begin b'siyata d'shmaya and see something that's really incredible. In general, we'll start from a different angle. And that is that when a person usually sins, a person does an Aveira, okay? So Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, he says that worse than the Aveira, like what you did in Shamayim, like in the spiritual worlds, is what you do for yourself. Meaning, in the Shamayim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu could forgive you. He sees the Nisayon. What's the worst part of a sin? Not what you did in the heavens, but what you did to yourself. What does that mean? When a person sins, he basically tells himself, I'm a failure. I was supposed to do A, but I wasn't able to do it. I did B. And when a person constantly has that feeling inside of him, that I'm a failure and I'm no good and I can't continue and I can't succeed, that's more crushing than the effect of the sin in the Shamayim, because that HaKadosh Baruch Hu could be meichal. But yourself, meaning besides for getting forgiveness from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you also need to get forgiveness from who? From yourself. You need to retrain yourself to think, I'm not a failure. I don't just sin. I could do much better. I could grow. I could become the best version of myself. That's a very famous idea with Rabbi Nachman, with the sin itself. So now you have Yosef, okay? Let's take this idea and bring it into Yosef, into this whole story. We'll see something, like I said, a whole new approach of why Yosef didn't tell his father. So you have Yosef. He became king. He has an opportunity to send an email to his father, to his brothers, to send a message, by the way, I'm okay. And also, what could he have done? He could have also said, I'm sending you a message, and by the way, I also forgive you. And if he would have done that, we would be learning the Torah and we would be saying, Yosef a tzaddik, wow, what a tzaddik. He was in jail for 12 years, right, in suffering. He makes it out. The first thing he does when he makes it out, what does he do? He calls in his brothers and he says, don't worry, I forgive you. And we all would have said, you know what? Yosef a tzaddik, look at this, incredible, right? A person wronged you for 12 years. And right away, what are you able to do? To forgive, right? We would have given a lot of credit. But Yosef is much deeper, much deeper. He says, it could be that I can forgive them. He says, if I let them, if I do it in this way, if I announce to the brothers, by the way, come, you can come back to Mitzrayim, and don't worry, I'll take care of all your needs, and I'll forgive you. And we all would have said, wow, Yosef HaTzadik, incredible. He would have been able to forgive them, but the brothers would live with the shame and the guilt their entire life of we sold our brothers, and we're the biggest failures in the world. So Yosef, what does he need to do? He needs to orchestrate a situation that puts the brothers back in the same position that he was in with an ability to let go of one of their brothers for their own personal good, and them to be able to stand up and say, no, we're not doing this again, right? And once they do that, they're able to re-believe in themselves. And this is the idea of teshuva that the Rambam writes. What does the Rambam write? The Rambam says like this, Ezu teshuva gemura. What is the highest form of teshuva? Zeh shebai liyado, davar she'avar bo, a person who did an aveira, and then he's put in the same exact, and he failed. He did an aveira and he sinned. And then he's put back in the same exact situation. Ve'efshar bi'ado lasato. And you're still able to do it. You're able to do the same sin. Upiresh ve'lo asa. And you didn't do it. Why didn't you do it? Mipnei teshuva. Because you actually did teshuva. Lo mi'ira. Not from fear of sin or whatever. Ve'lo mikshron koach. Not because you're weak and it's whatever. But you're doing it completely because you're not doing the sin because of teshuva. Says the Rambam, that's teshuva gemura. So says Yosef HaTzadik. He says, I need to orchestrate a situation where my brothers come down and one of the brothers are taken captive, and then they're basically put in the same situation where they can say, let's leave this brother here and we'll figure out what we're going to do afterwards, right? Or they can stand up for their one lost brother and say, no, we're not going to make the same mistake twice. I'm not going to leave my brother behind. So what does Yosef do? Yosef waits 7 years and he's waiting for his brothers to come down. And then finally the brothers come down and he sees them. He says, but Binyamin isn't here. I need to orchestrate a whole scenario over here that Binyamin is going to be taken behind, and I want to see if my brothers are going to be able to stand up for themselves and stand up for Binyamin and actually defend him. So he sends them with some food, but he leaves some of the brothers behind. And then they have to come back a second time. And the second time, who's there? Binyamin. And he still doesn't reveal himself to Binyamin and to the whole family. Why not? Because he needs to see, are they able to do tshuva? Not for himself. He could forgive in a second. He was willing to forgive 9 years ago. Why does he want to create the situation again? So they can live with themselves for the rest of their lives. So they can say, wow, I actually did overcome this situation. And then he puts his becher, his cup, in the bag of Binyamin, and he says, Binyamin is going to be my slave. You all go back to your father and enjoy. Atzlacha rabba, sei gesund und stark. We'll see you later. Okay? So now the brothers have an option. What do? Do we go back and leave Binyamin like they did Yosef? Or do we stand up for our brother? And that's where the Parsha begins. Vayigash elav Yehuda. Yehuda steps forward and he says, absolutely not. I made this mistake before. And what does he discuss in the Psukim? He said, we already had a brother. And we already gave up this brother. And he's already gone. And I'm not making the same mistake a second time. Velo yachal Yosef litapek. Yosef at this moment cannot hold it in anymore. Vayevk Yosef, and he cries, and he says, Ani Yosef ha'odavichai. He says, now did I reveal myself to you and I forgive you, but now you're able to forgive yourself. You're able to live your life knowing that you would never do this ever again. And that gift that Yosef gave to the brothers is the most incredible gift that you can give to a person. When you're forgiving someone, it's not just, okay, I forgive you, and now figure it out. But you're giving him the kelim, you're giving him the ability to be able to forgive himself, to be able to live life, to continue. Now you ask, very nice. Yosef was doing this for his brothers, right? He wanted them to do tshuva. But why make the father suffer? Why make Yaakov suffer? Fine, you want the brothers to be able to live life. But why? At least tell Yaakov that you're alive. So it says Ratorsky, he says, what does a father want? What do parents really want from their kids? They want to give them presents. They want to give them prizes. They want their kids to be functional human beings in society and to live a life to the best of their ability. They don't want kids that are emotionally imbalanced, that they're not able to forgive themselves, that they're not able to get up from failure, that they're not able to continue. Yosef, who knew his father the most, like we started off, Yosef and Yaakov had the best relationship. They were learning all the time. He got the special Ktonis Pasim. He knew him to the depths of his heart. Yosef knew that this is what Yaakov wanted. Yosef knew that Yaakov wants children that are able to do tshuva properly, and the only way the brothers could have gotten up after making such a devastating mistake of selling their brother Yosef, the only way they could have lived a functional life afterwards was if they're able to forgive themselves. And the only way they would be able to forgive themselves is how? If they're put through the exact same situation and they don't do it again. And that is the gift that Yosef gave the brothers. Not just I forgive you, but I forgive you and now live life because you're much stronger. I know you're not able to do that. And Yaakov was willing to give up all the years of suffering just so his family his children can live life where they know they're functional. They know they're able to when they fail, they're able to get up and to continue. And that is the greatest sign of love. The greatest sign of love is not raising kids on pillows and making sure everything works out okay. The greatest sign of love is giving your kids the kelim and the tools that they're able to live life and sustain themselves in an appropriate way, in a way that they can deal with their failures and get up from the failures and overcome their trials and tribulation. Now, what's fascinating about this whole idea is this is why Yaakov never reprimanded the brothers, right? You see Yaakov, he doesn't hold loose in Parshas Vayigash. He tells Shimon and Levi, Apam, and this person, he never says, guys, brothers, why did you sell them? Why did you sell Yosef? It says Ratorsky why. Because Yaakov realized that if he would reprimand them, it can crush them. Meaning they already realized. So when do you need to reprimand a child? When he doesn't realize what he did, right? So you have to show him the gravity of what he did. Here they know what they did. It was so clear to them. And Yosef orchestrated this whole idea that they can rebuild the trust in themselves. If Yaakov would now say, you guys, why did you do this? You're terrible. It can crush them again. It can break them a second time. So that's why Yaakov chooses to stay silent. Because the message, what got through. They knew what they did. They fixed their mistake. They did tshuva. And now they believe in themselves again. Reprimanding them at this point would completely crush them and would completely break them. And he wanted to, Yosef and Yaakov, as the father, he wanted to raise children that are capable of living up a full life. Now, why do I think that this is an incredible idea? Because this idea, I read in a different book from Rabbi Twersky, a story that happened to Rav Twersky's parents, okay? That is actually, basically, it's like, I would say it's like the inspiration for this whole idea. What's the story? Fascinating story that Rav Tursky writes in the Sefer Tursky on Parsha. Rav Tursky, now I'm talking about the brother, Rabbi M.D. Tursky. He discusses his father was also a medical doctor. And his father, when he was older, he got diagnosed, Rahman al-Itzlan, with a very rare case of cancer. And it was, when they found out, it was already in the late stages. So he calls his son, Rabbi M.D. Tursky, and he says, I just got diagnosed, please run over. Rabbi Tursky hears this, he drops everything, and he runs to his father's bedside. When he gets to the hospital, and he gets to his father's bedside, his father gives him like the update about the whole, what's going on. And his father says, listen, I've been a medical doctor for a very long time, and I know that the stage of cancer that I'm in right now, and the type of cancer that I have, if I go through chemotherapy, it's not going to do anything. All it's going to do is going to cause me more pain and more suffering, and it's going to be whatever. So I made the decision that I'm not going through, I'm not going to do the chemotherapy. As he finishes the sentence, Rebbetzin Tursky, Rabbi Tursky's mother, the wife of the patient, runs in, and she said, I just spoke to the doctor, and he recommends chemotherapy, and he thinks that it can prolong your life by at least a few months. So, my dear husband, do you want to do it? So the husband looks at his wife, and he says, absolutely. What's the question? Of course I'm going to do it. And he says, great, I'm going to go tell the doctor. And she leaves the room, and she goes to tell the doctor. Now, Tursky's sitting there at his bedside of his father. He's like, I must have missed something. Because a second ago, you just told me that there's no way you're doing it, because it's not going to do anything, and it's not going to prolong your life, and it's just going to cause pain and suffering. Rav Tursky's father said the most incredible statement. He said, you're right. I know from all my years of medical experience that going through chemotherapy is not going to help and not going to do anything and not going to prolong my life, not even by a second. He says, but my whole life, I've been giving to my wife. That's what marriage is, to give to the other person. If I don't go through chemotherapy, my wife is going to live with the guilt her entire life. I should have convinced him. Maybe he would have lived a little bit longer. If I would have convinced him to do the chemotherapy, maybe it would have helped, and that would have prolonged his life by a few more months, and maybe he could have seen this kid's bar mitzvah and whatever. And I don't want your mother to live with this guilt her entire life. So I'm willing to go through the pain and suffering. This is the last gift that I'll give your mother, the ability to live the rest of her life with the peace and tranquility of mind that she did all that she could to prolong my life. And that's the gift that I want to give her. This is the story that Rav Tursky's father, that they lived through this. And this idea is basically Yosef HaTzadik and the brothers. Yosef doesn't want to just forgive the brothers. He doesn't just want to say, machalach, 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 okay, let's move on. He wants to give them the ability to live with a frame of mind that they can live life to the fullest, that they don't live with the guilt for their entire life. How do they live life for the rest of their life without a sense of guilt? You know how they do that? They do that by knowing that they actually did teshuva. And the way they did teshuva is that you're put in the same situation, in the same time, in the same location, in the same everything. And at this point, you said, no, I'm not gonna do this sin. That is the greatest gift that Yosef gave the brothers. And he knew that Yaakov would agree. This is a mind-blowing idea. This is like a whole new view of the whole Parsha, of the whole story of what's going on. But there's one personality which we didn't yet discuss. We discussed why Yosef didn't tell the brothers, because he wanted them to do teshuva. We discussed why Yosef didn't tell his father, because he knew that his father would also want them to do teshuva to the highest ability. There's one person we didn't discuss. Who? Binyamin. What's Binyamin at fault? Right? So you're right. Binyamin, he's the one who, up until this point, has been getting no love. Meaning, Yosef shows his love to his brothers. How does he show his love to his brothers? By giving them the opportunity to be able to forgive themselves. Yosef shows his love to his father by giving his children, the 10 Shvatim, the ability to forgive themselves, which is what Yaakov really wants. And where does Yosef show his real, true love to Binyamin? You know where? When they finally meet for the first time, and they start crying on each other's shoulders. They start crying on each other's shoulders. And we asked, why be such a downer? Why is it now you're crying, right? It's going to happen in 500 years, right? And why are you crying for the other person? Cry for yourself. So I heard an amazing idea. This is based on an idea from the Lubavitch Rebbe. And he says like this. He says, crying won't fix your problems, right? You have a kid. He's building a Lego and it breaks. Does crying do anything? It's not going to magically build the castle back up, right? It's not going to build whatever happens. It's not going to cause it to go back up. Crying is an emotional response to what is happening, but it doesn't actually solve the problem. It doesn't fix anything that you have. If a person loses a lot of money, he cries. It's not going to make the money come back, right? Someone has a tragedy, he's sick, he starts crying. Crying isn't going to make you healthy. It's not going to fix your problem. So it says the Rebbe, when you have a problem, right, don't use your emotional space to just cry for yourself, right? Use your emotional strength to actually solve the problem. So crying for yourself rarely ever works. Doesn't help anything, doesn't solve the problem. There's one time, says the Rebbe, that crying helps. It actually solves the problem. When does crying help? When you're crying for the other person. When another person is going through something that's so painful and so hard and so difficult, and you meet them, and you actually cry for that person, and you say, I see what you're going through, and it's so hard and it's so difficult, and it's causing me to cry, that takes away from the pain of the other person. Then the actual crying is a solution to his pain and suffering. It's actually fixing his pain and suffering. There's a story of Rav Avadia Yosef, where there was someone who, Rahman al-Tzan, a child, a 4-year-old child, was killed in a car accident. And he was close to Rav Avadia. Rav Avadia wanted to be Menachem Aval. And at the end of the Shiva, they asked the father, out of all the people that came to be Menachem Aval, who was the one that was comforted you the most? So he said, the one who comforted me the most was Rav Avadia. So, really? What did he say? What did he say that comforted you? He said, he didn't say anything. He said, what do you mean he didn't say anything? He said, Rav Avadia walked in. He said, he sat down next to me. He held my hand. He cried for 3 minutes straight. He said, just crying and crying and crying and crying and crying. And then he stopped. And then he wiped the tear off my face. And he said, Mina Shemaim Tunuchamu. And he got up and he left. He said, all he did was cry with me. And that crying took away my pain. That took away, when I saw that other people care for me. Yosef HaTzadik needs to show his love for Binyamin. He showed his love for the brother, that he wants him to live a functional life. He showed his love for his father, that he wants that his father wants his kids to live a functional life. But how does he show his love for Binyamin? You know how he shows his love? He's not being a downer. He's saying, Binyamin, all I care is about your pain. I know there's going to be a Beis Hamikdash in your chalka, and it's going to be destroyed. I'm crying for you. I'm crying because I care about you, because I've been thinking about you every single day for the past 22 years that I've been here. How could I show you that I really care for you, that I really have been thinking about you? You know how I show that to you? I show that to you by crying for you. And that is the greatest, not going around at a bris and saying everyone's here going to die soon. It's saying I actually care about your pain and your suffering, and it hurts me dearly. And to show that, he's crying now, and Binyamin is doing the same thing. He's crying for his chelek in Shiloh. So the greatest way, the one time when crying actually really helps, is when you cry for the other person. And I might have mentioned this story before, but I'll mention it again. Unfortunately, in our shul in Ra'anana here, so there were 2 soldiers that Rahman al-Tzan got killed. One of them was Yaroni Chidis, whose yahrzeit is coming up in the next week or so. And about a year and a half later, a few months ago, Natan Rosenfeld, Hashem Yimkom Damo, was also killed in Gaza. And when Natan fell, so his father, Avi Rosenfeld, called me right away to come in. So I walked in when the 3 soldiers were still there, and it's to see a family in such a state it's the worst thing ever. Mamish, like the worst thing ever. There was one moment there that moved me to the core, and it's mamish. I say it a lot. I think about it a lot. And it's crazy. It's mamish. It's a crazy thing. It's mamish. It's Yosef HaTzadik and Binyamin. So once we went through all the details of the Levaya, what's going to happen? So the soldiers who were there, they asked Avi and Sam, could we announce it now to the public? Could we do the utar lepirsum? So once they gave the green light, so then everyone saw it in the news, and then people started trickling into the house. People started coming in right away when they heard that Avi and Sam lost their son. So they came in right away, and people started coming and hugging and crying with Avi and Sam. And at one point, who came in fairly in the beginning? Clive Chidis. Clive Chidis is the father of Yaroni Chidis. So to see the 2 fathers who lost children, they meet, and right away they lock eyes and they hug and they're crying. Mamish crying on each other's shoulders, crying and crying. It could be 30 seconds, maybe even longer, just crying on each other's shoulders. And then at one point, Avi lifts up his head from Clive's shoulder, and he grabs Clive by the face, and he says, I never wanted to be part of this club of parents who lost their children. He says, but now I am. He says, but now that I'm part of this club, for the first time in my life, I can really tell you, Clive, I am so sorry for what you went through. And then they embraced and they hugged again. And in my eyes, that was Yosef and Binyamin. How do you show someone that you love them? How do you show someone that you really, really care about them? Crying for yourself doesn't help. But when you're crying, they were on each other's shoulders, and each one was crying for the other person. Avi was crying for Clive, and Clive was crying for Avi. And that takes away a little bit of the pain. And that's what Yosef HaTzadik did right here. What Yosef and Binyamin did to show their love for one another, they each cried for one another. So let's summarize. we ask three questions, three bomb questions. Number one, why didn't Yosef announce to his father, tell your father, I'm alive, right? And take away part of the suffering. How did we answer that? We said that, and also the brothers, tell him he's alive. The way we answered that was very simple. We said that the whole way, forgiving someone is not just about to say, oh, I forgive. Now you go deal with all the trauma of what you did to me. No, he's forgiving the person. He wanted to create a situation where they're able to forgive themselves. Because worse than the sin itself that you do is the feeling that you have after the sin that's going to cause you to sin even more. So you have to learn to forgive besides the forgiving other people. You have to learn to forgive yourself. To forgive yourself from the sins. And that's what Yosef does. He orchestrates a plan that it's going to be the same situation where Binyamin is going to be taken captive just like he was taken captive. And he wants to know, are the brothers going to stand up or not? And by the fact that they did, that's a real teshuva process. They were in the same place, like the Rambam says, in the same situation, in the same, everything was exactly the same. What are they going to do? Are they going to do the same mistake or are they going to get up? And the moment they were able to stop and not make the same mistake, they were able to finally forgive themselves. And that's why he waited so long. And he also knew that Yaakov wanted this, even though Yaakov was suffering. But what does Yaakov want of his children? He wants what we all want of our children. We want them to be functional. We want them to be able to get up after failures and to learn how to deal with themselves and their own failures. And also, that's how Yosef showed his love to his brothers and his love to his father. How did he show his love to Binyamin? The way he showed his love to Binyamin, by hugging, embracing him, and crying for the other person. The one time that crying helps is when you're crying for the other person and you're not crying for yourself. So B'ezrat Hashem, we should be zocha to learn from this, how to forgive ourselves, how to really get up from our mistakes, from our failures. You have to learn, I made a mistake. Okay, you did a sin. Beseda, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is rachum v'chanim. We say Yud Gimel Midas of Rachamim. He's a lot more compassionate than we are to ourselves. So just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when you do the teshuva process and HaKadosh Baruch Hu forgives you, learn also to forgive yourself, and like that you'll be able to get up and live a functional, productive, and amazing life. Good Shabbos.